Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a what you
Hi,
say.
I'm Rey.
And I'm Steph,
And this is the Psychom Hotline.
where we gossip about all the cringe and exciting ways science is communicated in real life.
So let's bring the drama.
Wild and free.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Stephanie. How are
Is
you?
it too late to say Happy New Year?
Oh, so it's Feb 6 that we are recording this.
Well, Happy New Year to the 30 people that listened to us last year.
Yes, Happy New Year to you. It's going so great. Wow.
Everything is fine. We just love to kick everything off with such a bang. I love our country.
Love it. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. This week is a high week. Not high-ish, an okay-ish,
Mhm.
mood-wise.
Right.
I'm not in like the existential dread down that, usually comes by just living here. But,
Right.
I'm on a high. I'm on a high right
Yeah.
now.
Good. To really take it and sniff it very deep because I feel like there's so many roller coaster situations where I'm gonna remember that the highs also exist because sometimes it's so low that you forget that it comes up and down.
Our podcast is like a creative outlet. And so it just felt I was missing you so much, not having to talk to you. And so I'm glad we're talking again. We're here to yap, we're here to talk shit, and we're here to pretend that we know how to critically think.
I have nothing to add to this. Perfect description of this podcast.
Yeah. So let's kick it off. What are you recently hating on that has caused us to come back to our podcast to let everyone listen in to our hate?
Um, Told you a little bit about that on WhatsApp. I've been sending you urge. I feel like recently I've been sending you all these audio messages that is just me starting I just needed to tell you this, and then halfway through I'm sitting in the middle of a bench in the middle of the street
Cry.
crying loudly. I'm not okay. I'm not
Yeah.
okay. Especially me being a person, I feel like my grief mechanisms are a little broken where
Mhm.
I'm just stoic, stoic, stoic. And then I watch a Korean show and someone is crying and then I break. I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I think I'm not okay." Um, I have so much to hate on. I'm already getting a little shaky and all of that.
I
For
guess maybe our disclaimer is please give us the grace, the space. Yeah,
the shimmy of grace.
the grace and the space to just be vulnerable and to just, yeah.
Yeah,
I guess
for real.
I always put that voice on when I'm just fucking around, but honestly, yeah, we're gonna try to get vulnerable, but we're gonna talk a lot of weird shit and the rabbit holes that we're gonna go down into. So I guess just grace for any
All of it.
slip up, fuck ups.
Yeah.
We're here to change our minds and keep our minds open.
Yeah. Seven, I think honestly most of you are in grief mode, so that's a part of this. Um, for our 30 listeners probably know that I'm Iranian and things are really, really bad in Iran. Really bad in Iran. Something that I hated on today was, you know, as I'm seeing all the people that are dying in Iran, which is in masses. You just it's a world of social media, right? So you see everyone's content. And there's this girl who made beautiful little dolls and toys and was quirky and weird. And there's this really hot girl who's a motorcyclist. There's this firefighter who's just so brave and carried someone in the middle of the protests. And I know he got shot and died. All of these people died. There's just
Mm.
young guys and girls and parents and everyone and couples and just horrible stuff, Stefan. Horrible. And you see that and you see their faces and you see them when they're laughing, when they're funny, and when they're all of that. And I'm scrolling and seeing all of that. And then see just suddenly a skincare thing and something else. And then this content comes up and it's this two Iranian guys. And they're in a station where the trend where it's when they say it's a one man job, but it's two people and it's "Ded, ded, ded." and then it's, like, showing the 2 of them, like, doing the same thing. We might have to, like, put a video on it. It's like, "Oh, the job is a one-man job, but you wanna do it with your best friend," so it's, like, 2 of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yes, 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 yes,
Like,
yes,
it's
yes,
like
yeah, like, oh, yeah, like, you don't need both of you guys to do it, and it's just, like, you and I, like, pretending to tap together at
time
the same
together,
time.
right,
Yeah.
you know, holding the piece of paper together. There was this guy, and he was, like, in this, like, fire truck with his friend, this, like, 2 random Iranians, and they're, like, driving the truck together, and it was, like, really funny, and I'm like, "Who are these random 2 people, and why is this coming up?" And then suddenly I noticed, like, in the bottom, like, my friends liked it, and it was from November. And then, like, I opened the comments, and that was the firefighter who carried someone else and later got shot, and it just broke me. This, like, goofy, lovely guy. It it's it just broke me, and he's, like, not the only one. These are just,
Yeah.
like, normal people that wanted more, and they're, like, care about other people, and, like, it's stuff of the movies. It's stuff of the movies, like these heroes that carry others, this other guy that literally, like Game of Thrones style, like, held the door when other
Mm,
people were running away, and they come in and they kill him as he was trying to hold the door.
mhm.
And I think what is even, like, harder to, like that I'm hating on, some of it is, like, the survivor's guilt of me, like, being here, but, like, being in the day to day. Like, something that happened was, like, I started posting things like I thought, "You know what? Like, I'm a communicator. I should be able to, like, tell personal stories and talk about some of these concepts of why are we, like, not agreeing with each other and all of that." And something that happened was, I gained more followers, and my first reaction was, like, this joy of, like, "Oh, I'm getting new followers." And right after this, like, horrible shame that, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
Yeah,
are
you're getting pleasure like, you're getting followers going off of creating content off your grief of, like,
right,
other people's
right. And
deaths.
that's
Mhm.
exactly how it felt, and the shame that it came with it, and then I was like, "Should I not? Should I not talk about it?" But, like, we're all like, "You gotta talk about it." And then there was, like, the bit of me that was like, "Oh, but people are seeing it." And a lot of people were not seeing a lot of these before, and I get to talk about things that I think are important.
Mhm.
So and I still feel like this, like and when I say followers, like, I don't have, like, 10,000 new followers, I mean, like, 5 people followed me on this day for this.
Mhm.
Um, but there is something with just, like, having so many emotions and so much grief, and the part where you're like, "It's my job to be a communicator and to try to wanna make things better as a communicator of whether it's misinformation circulating, whether it's why are people not changing their minds," and you move in these worlds of, I am grieving, and I am doing these things, and deep inside, I'm like, "How impactful is it to be talking about, like, theories of science communication
Yeah,
in the midst of this?"
yeah,
And yet we do that.
yeah, yeah. That's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot to carry. Thanks for sharing, Ray, but
Mhm.
that's a lot. Mhm. I'm sorry.
Oh, how are you? What have you been hating on stuff?
Um, it feels so, like, loud on the same of just, like, grieving people on the other side of the world, but it's also like, "Oh, no, now it's happening in our own backyards too."
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Ay, ay, ay. And
yep.
so, like, I don't know if listeners know this, but I'm Venezuelan.
I should just
Uh, I've been watching too many of these other girls, and they're, like, from Miami, and they're just so sassy, so it's just, like, in me right now. But I was catching up with some volunteers, and one of them is a Venezuelan filmmaker, but she lives in Venezuela. Like, I grew up American, and so I'm pretty much, like, American at this point, but my whole family's from Venezuela. And so when we kick off the 2026 taking taking Venezuela's president or AKA dictator or whatever. Yeah, it just caused a lot of, like, strife within my own family. And then catching up with this friend who lives in Venezuela of just kind of like the dual feeling of like as Venezuelan people, they've been of just like we've been asking multiple countries to like take this man away. And so even though Trump is a piece of shit,
Mhm.
he took this evil person away. But at the same time, she lives it day to day. So then when you see on social media, everyone's talking about their theories. We see Venezuelans celebrating, but then we see people just like Trump is, doing imperialism and blah, 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 blah. But then it's just, okay, why aren't we like, we should be listening to Venezuelan voices. But even within the Venezuelan community, again, it's not and every country is not is not a monolith.
Right.
And so there's people celebrating, there's people that are upset and angry. And so but she's like, it's really interesting to like live the day to day of just like, okay, well, he is just a part of that puzzle. Our whole government is still like ran as a mafia.
Right.
And so like, she's been living in a country where like journalists get taken away, people get taken or arrested or abducted, whatever, if they go against the government. Like it's still a scary place to live, even with Maduro gone. But she still has to live her day-to-day life of just like, "Hey, I'm gonna about to go to travel to film a documentary about hummingbirds." And
Right.
but then when she's describing of, like, what it feels like to, like, live in, like, a dictatorship, I'm like, "Oh, you're describing stuff that's, like, happening now in America," which is also
Mhm.
scary to think about of just, like, all the ICE raids that are happening, citizens being killed, journalists being arrested, and it's just like, "What the fuck is going on?"
Mhm.
But then I'm over here like, I just had a job interview with this, like, really cool media company. Like, it's a really weird survivor's guilt that we're, like, all kind of, like, experiencing at a
Right.
different level. But then same with you of just, like, the science communication researchers within us of just, like, how is media shaping and informing how we're even talking and reacting about these things? Because like, I went home for the holidays and I had a really crazy fucking experience, and it wasn't super crazy, I'm being a little bit dramatic, but to talk to friends, families, neighbors, and to hear everyone's different echo chambers or social media
Mhm.
feeds, and it was just cranked up at an even higher volume like, level than it was before. I'm like, "Oh, this is like things are getting weird. Things are strange." And so between you and I, like, we're always trying yeah, again, we're trying to think about, okay, what's the science communication theory? Like us as professionals, we're trying to consult people on like what their science communication strategy messaging should be. But I feel like some of the science communication theories that have worked in the past to describe things, I'm like, how do we do that? I feel like it no longer can work or apply when things just feel at such a heightened level. Everything just feels that it's at a million, so it's just like, what is going on? What is
Mhm.
going on?
Mhm. Yeah. I I think what you're describing, it feels like the theories are like I agree with the theories. I agree with all of them, like how we,
Mhm.
you know, change behavior, motivated reasoning, all of that. But it feels like when you think of like this like small set, it feels like a lot for a human to deal with, to use it. Like I think of like a lot of these, I'm like, okay, if this was like a small lab and someone had like a idea that comes in and they disagree with it and I can go in and have a conversation with them, like, sure, like that is something I could think about. But this is so big,
Yeah.
so international, so all consuming. And on top of it, like what you're saying is like, then there's like AI generated stuff. And there it's which is
Yeah.
it's all of that, and then the grief makes everything a billion times worse because you have so much less capacity to even like, you're like, "Even if it's AI, isn't it true that, like,
Mhm.
they're horrible or they're doing this?" Like, that's one of the things that I'm keep hearing where it's like, "Well, even if it's AI, aren't they killing people? Aren't they doing this?" I'm talking about, like,
Yeah.
and I get it, like, I'm not saying, like I'm just saying there is so much, so many layers that is hard to be like, "Yeah, but, like, you should have a conversation that is like that." And at the same time, I'm like, what else can you do than to individually for like all of us to feel like we should have better conversation. We should be better at listening. We should be better at how we consume and share information, but still it just feels like too much and too little done. Too much happening, too little done.
There's, like, a meme where it's just, like, the person, like, throwing a bucket of water and it, like, the whole thing's just, like, in flames, you know? And it's just like, how do we apply theory at such a mass scale when there's, like, so many variables, so many factors, and again, it just feels so much bigger than just us at the individual
Right.
level.
Right. Before this, I was watching this video. It's this talk by I think it's Ethan Zuckerman, and he's like a really good researcher. And I saw him like one time at Northwestern many years ago, and then I saw he had like a talk called like Truthiness, and it was for like 2012. And he was quoting someone where, okay, I hope I get the metaphor right, but I remember he was saying something like if someone receives a misinformation, right? It's like they're getting a shock, and then the way you like combat misinformation is you get to it like 3 days later when you find out they're shocked and you're like, oh, I'm gonna band-aid it and like figure out what to do about it, which is like too late because like there's all these consequences. And then he said, like, well, another way to think about this metaphor is that what if we go a little further back, or like wearing this bulletproof vest so that when like someone is like shooting you with this misinformation, you're like immune to it. So kind of like, these ideas of like getting people inoculated towards how to spot misinformation. And then another way to go like above it is to be like, can we just get people not to shoot you with misinformation, right? So that
Mm, mhm, mhm,
and I
mhm.
thought it was fantastic, but at the same time, as I was, like, listening and I'm like, "This is 2012," I'm like, right now, it's like you are there with this bulletproof vest and someone is, like, with this AI AR-15 ta, 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 going in,
Mhm,
and there's a fire and your foot is burning and you're crying and
mhm,
everything else is
mhm,
gone. So it just, like the image of that metaphor became a billion times worse, and I understand, and it's right that, like, yes, you have to Band-Aid it and take care of it, and you have to wear the vest, and you have to try to stop people from shooting you with all of that, but, like, everything is on steroids.
mhm, 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 mhm. Yeah, yeah.
What hopeful conversation we're having,
I
Steph.
know, this is our hate right now is so peaceful. I know it doesn't add to anyone's anxiety. Everything is great. Uh, yeah, I guess it's like okay, so Ray and I were initially talking about this conversation just because of like I guess the undertone that we were trying to pivot towards, which is like, how do we change people's minds? I've seen like multiple things of how in times of resistance, like community is always the biggest thing.
Mhm.
I'm curious, how do we form community when everyone is so deep into their own tribes? Even us, like we're guilty of that too. And
Right.
so, like, how do we evaluate our own party, our own tribes, our own identities in order to, like, reach hands or reach across the aisle, so to say, to, like, build community where it comes back to just, like, caring for one another rather than us versus them, which is allowing the powers that be to just gain more power
Mm,
and also just, like, further the suffering that we're all experiencing.
yeah. Especially that, like, I keep hearing, like, the them, like, "They said this, and they want you to," but I'm like, "Who's the they? Who is the
Yeah.
they?"
But we all have our own days though, you know?
Yeah, yeah. There was a book, came out, like, many years ago, it was called Bowling Alone. Um, and it was this idea that like in America, like one of the communities that was like very strong was like this community of like people that play like did bowling together.
Mhm.
People would come in from like all sorts of like attitudes and political parties and everything. And you get to know each other to being in this like bowling spaces. And you don't learn about each other's like ideology as much, but more like this is a person that I like and we're playing together and they're like lovely person. And then they might hear about their like ideology or political party or anything like that. But you're not like, oh, you're evil immediately because
Mhm.
well, you know them as a person. And one of the things that happened with years and stuff and like social media and everything is that we lost a lot of those spaces and a lot of those connections. So you have like bridging and bonding. Bonding is what you were saying, like within our smaller tribes, where we get to be closer with the people that we know and our same ideology. And then bridging is that what that bowling did, where you are in a space with someone that is different from you, but you're bridging and you're getting to know them. So when you have social media and all these spaces are gone, you have more bonding, fewer bridgings, fewer community buildings like that. And then when someone who you used to bowl with but not anymore, it was very different from you, says something that is different, immediately you're like, that's the day, that's evil, that's a horrible person, to the point of you to read the comment section and they're like, good that they got killed. Good
Yeah.
that they got shot. Kill them all, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about
Yeah.
all kind of political,
Yes.
feelings and countries and everything. It's just the human part. And I think your point, how do you do the bridging as well with your communities?
Yeah, because there's the sentiments that I see within the comments or within my own little echo chambers or whatever. It's just like, well, it's not even worth putting a bridge there because they believe in something different.
Mhm.
Oh, man, like, yeah, I guess it's just hard because it's just like, yeah, I guess we're all automatically pointing fingers, calling each other's thing as evil. But it's really hard because within our own silos, we are seeing evils, quote unquote. Or no, I don't know, not even a quote unquote. Like we are
Yeah,
seeing evils happening with
right.
just like people are dying, people are being murdered. We're becoming desensitized to that. But then, oh, okay, so I don't want to talk about this, but we're gonna have like I don't know if you guys ever came across this like not a meme, but it was almost kind of like a one block comic strip, just like a one square thing comic strip of just like there's a 6 on the floor. There's 2 people standing in front and behind of the 6. And of just like, "Oh no, that's a 6. Oh no, that's a 9."
Mhm.
Of just like, okay, people are going to perceive reality differently. And so with these murders or atrocities that we're seeing in the news and how the narrative can be seen from 2 different perspectives, that they're both seeing something evil from their lens. It's just like, okay, like how like when we're so true, like where we're believing the truth within our own circles, like how do we move past that?
Right.
Like that's just like I think that's just where the scary part comes in. It's just like this person was acting in self-defense. Oh no, this person was murdered.
Yeah.
you know? And then we have our higher places of power also adding and contributing to different types of narratives.
Mhm.
And then that narrative goes into our media and then goes back into the people consuming and then it comes back into our communities and then we're excluding like I have within my own inner bubble of family, like I have people that are not even speaking to each other
Right.
because of like being able to like not being seeing evils within each other's things and not being able to see side to side,
Right.
like eye to eye.
Right. Because it's also exhausting. Like there, like within my like scale of like I'm like okay, especially like for me an example of like Iran is like easier if I'm like if someone is like at this point pro government in Iran where like they're killing people in like masses and masses like honestly I don't have the energy to bridge there. But
Mhm.
within the fractions of people, like normal people, that now we have different opinions, whether it's about what's gonna happen to Iran after, what is happening now, what is like within those, sure, bridge building, like that makes sense to me. But like there is I have like a bridge building emotional limit. And I know there are other people that would go beyond that, and I respect them and I think we need that. Like I'm not there yet.
Mhm.
Um but just before this, I made a social media content because I thought this was very important. Exactly what you're talking about. This idea of like seeing 6 and 9. Uh,
Mhm.
there was a study done some years ago. Do you remember Colbert had like Colbert Report where he was doing this like persona of like a Republican
Yeah,
conservative?
and I literally thought he was, like, a legit conservative before he
Right.
was just like, "Just kidding. This was just an act," you know?
That's exactly true. So, like, people that will watch it and not, like, realize he's, like, having an act, like, they're not idiots. It's satire. Satire is very ambiguous. It's like every time you fall for the onion because you don't see it's an onion headline, it's not that you're an idiot.
Mhm.
It's just that you don't know. Satire is confusing. So, basically what they did was that they showed this, like, 3-minute clip of a conversation he had with this journalist, Amy Goodman, where they were talking about, like, the Iraq War.
Mhm.
And as he's talking, he's kinda like, yeah, like, I'm just like, I can't remember what he said, but something like liberals are like
Mhm.
stupid, this is wrong and everything. And Amy Goodman is like, no, this is what's going on. They showed that to people, and then they kind of like measured their if they're like conservative or liberals.
Mhm.
So everyone found it funny. So everyone realized like this is a funny conversation. Conservatives saw Colbert as conservative and they were like, "Oh, he's a conservative and he is making fun of the liberals and he is actually saying the liberals are making bad decisions and that." And then the liberals were like, "Oh, like Colbert is a liberal and this is satire and he's actually making fun of conservatives." So it's the exact same content, but as much as the moment you have like even a little bit of ambiguity, even if the camera is put different, even if a car goes like this and this, even if like, and I'm talking about like Iran, US, everywhere, political, scientific, everything,
Mhm.
data is moved. People can take the thing that is gonna tell them that you're in the right your group is right, your identity is safe and intact. Like, why would I interpret it to something that would say, "I'm a bad person, my community is bad, I was wrong."
Mhm. Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
how it works.
Yeah.
And then
Okay, give me a
yeah.
go ahead, keep going, keep going, keep
No,
going, keep
sorry,
going, keep
I
going.
think in the realm of, like, solutions, there's a part of me that is like, "Well, there's all these things we could do," but then I keep coming back to maybe it's much less about what you can do with other people and so much more about like just looking inward and being like, how many of these videos am I falling for? How many of things am
Mhm.
I not changing my mind on? Because I think even though it's about yourself, once you learn how to be better yourself and be more empathetic and realize like I do that all the time, I think your conversations become better because then you show more grace and empathy towards other people who fall for this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna look at my notes really quick.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, right. Okay, that reminds me. I read a book called Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by
Fascinating.
Amanda Montel.
Yeah.
Sorry, listeners, if this is me trying so hard, but I was trying to like really fastly, like, I read this a while ago because it made me just think of like, the start of like the middle of last year, just like a lot of shit was happening. And this got recommended on my TikTok feed of just like, there's a bunch of books that are being banned. Here are some really good books that if you want to like, get them before they're banned or whatever kind of
Oh, this
stuff.
got banned?
I don't think it's banned, but it's more of just kind of like, it helps you in order to understand when our governments feel like, or like institutions of power feel like it's kind of going overboard or drawing a line. Like, this is books that can help you kind of think for yourself, like you just kind of mentioned, of just like, okay, like we can't do this at a mass scale, but how do we check and balance within our own minds to make sure that we're like, okay, how do we seek truth, skepticism, curiosity, empathy, so then we can kind of like make sure that we're not falling into these types of tendencies.
I love that.
So this book is called Cultish, and it's talking about how essentially like our tribalism, like how do cults, we always thought about it in terms of like, the people that are like in the movies that like move, or based on real life or whatever, that people will like make these huge communes. There's always like a person or a leader, and everyone seems like brainwashed to either kill people or be killed, in order for like this higher being, a higher entity, higher power, or this higher calling or whatever. But we can also, but now cults have gone into like the subculture genre of just like a brat summer, like a musician releases a new album. There's like a cultural cult kind of happening based off of like, the subgenres that we're kind of into. But then even within religion, our political ideologies, like those are cults within them of the self. So it's like what, but cult, there's not like a plain English. There's not a plain there's not plain English definition for cult, but it's mostly just kind of like a group that has like the same kind of like groupthink ideologies. And this author was saying like, okay, how could we define or identify cults? And one of the things was just like language, like language is a thing
Mhm.
that kind of ties cults together. We have internal jargon, inside jokes, and then also like an us versus them narrative that helps these subcults either recruit people, coerce people, or condition them into believing a specific narrative or specific lifestyle or a specific outcome these people come in. So like for Scientology, like join us and you will learn that you will be like a better human and do this and this. Or for religion of just like or Christianity specifically, of just like, if you believe in Jesus, then he's going to come and save us. Like there's a salvation, an outcome of these things. But having this internal language, some people are able to have the discernment to kind of see of just like, okay, this language is like, I'm not being tricked by this. I'm not going to fall for your MLM because I know this is just like a Ponzi scheme.
Right.
But for other people, it feeds off of either she mentioned also like another part in her book of just like America's laissez-faire atmosphere makes people feel all on their own. So there's generation after generation, the lack of institutional support paves way for alternative supernatural minded groups to surge. So it goes back into like when our needs are not met at an individual level is when we kind of seek a plate like to go into these other groups, and then it can push people to the extremes of these groups.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's a good quote.
Uh-huh.
She was trying to argue of just like there are other sociologists that are trying to be like, okay, we can manipulate or change the meaning of words in order to change the narrative that we're trying to say. So like for instance, like woke, for instance, used to represent kind of like the African diaspora of like, them as like a cultural people or whatever. And then now woke has turned into this liberal left-leaning, thing. Like we have changed the meaning of that word in order to change the narrative of like how something comes up. So it's just like, okay, how do we go back to just making sure like that woke is just or that word or that language goes back to just like the basic meaning of what that is. So like woke can just be like, oh, I woke up. Well, like woke just means like I've awakened, someone has woken up or whatever, and not add any other things. So there's this quote that says like, because language doesn't work to manipulate people into believing things they don't want to believe. Instead, it gives them license to believe ideas that they're already open to. Language, both literal and figurative, well-intentioned or ill-intentioned, politically correct or politically incorrect, reshapes a person's reality only if they are in an ideological place where that reshaping is welcomed.
Ah, right. So it's confirmation bias, basically. Like
Mhm, mhm,
you
mhm,
seek the information and accept the information that align with your worldview. So
mhm.
if you find a word that you're like, ah, or a community or anything that you're like, ah, this is the group, the word, the confirmation that I need for this thing that I had in my head, you'll kind of like consume it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like cultish leaders rely on power of confirmation bias by presenting one-sided version of information that supports their ideology and their followers actively want to hear. After
Right,
that, confirmation bias does the work for them.
right. It's also interesting that it's like there's a line between like words are helpful, right? Like even
Mhm.
the word woke, like on its own, like there is like all these great things that come with it. And there's like that, and, like you can take it for great things, and you can also take it to be like, you can say that, you can do that, you can do that, right? It's like
Yes.
the
Mhm.
spectrum. And when is the point where these things become Puritan versions of themselves, become like you're in or out, you this or that, like, and I think as you were saying, like, I was, like, taking notes, is like this cult is like us or against us, in and out.
Yeah,
It's
and
like
it
mm.
go ahead, keep going, keep going, keep
No,
going.
no, no, that's just I was just yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it also helps with just like, okay, well now yeah, have you ever seen the joke of just like, I hate how like academia always has all these acronyms. And so I came up with an acronym to describe how academia has like all these acronyms, you know? So it's just like sometimes language or words give us like more clarity to like label something for what it is. But then
Mhm.
sometimes we take that and then we take it to another level that ends up changing its meaning overall. Like for instance, like gaslighting. Like, okay, we learned what gaslighting is, and so it can help me identify the situation, but then like, "Oh, no, now the person that gaslit me knows what gaslighting means, and it has, like, gaslit me to think that I'm gaslighting them when they gaslighted me," like like, they're, like, taking advantage of that language in order to,
Right.
like, change the
Right, right,
thing.
right.
But I think it's also kinda helping. I think what I like about this book, and I think what kinda leans into kind of like our science of psychom interest of just like, okay, how do we see it as an individual level, see it affect the masses, and kind of like dissect it down to kind of see the clues that can lend us to to feed that little voice in the back of our head of being like, "Ooh, is this going against the narrative that I have already believed in, or is this going against it?" Like, checking my own confirmation biases to make sure of just like, "Okay, if this person's saying that I saw this thing and it's not what I'm actually seeing, like, am I just gonna blindly follow that?"
Mhm. No, I just thought because you brought up science communication, and I wonder if, like, some people are listening and they're like, "You guys are talking about politics. How is that why do you keep repeating science communication?" And I think the important point is, like, communication is mostly the same across different fields. So, like, the hard principles of science communication are the same with, like, whether you have, like, marketing communication, health communication, political communication. Plus, I feel like a lot of research in political communication and health communication, a lot of that has been, like, much older than science communication. So, a lot of that vocabulary, those examples, the cult examples, a lot of that would very much translate to science communication. And I think it's super helpful to think of those contexts, to think like, okay, so what about flat earthers? What about like communities that might not vaccine skeptics, but like vaccine denial that might be like very hardcore mob.
Bit like vaccine hesitant or
Yeah.
whatever,
Right, right,
yeah.
right, correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like versus like so once I feel like you know some of those concepts, and I think that's why it's important to talk about confirmation bias and like these, like, narratives that break them down. I don't know if it would be helpful or not, but there's, like, a cult story that defines some of those concepts because we talked a little about confirmation bias. I think cognitive dissonance and motivated reasoning are 2 other concepts. Should I do a mini story on the cult? Um, so there's this, like, social scientist, Leon Festinger, with I think a few of his, like, colleagues, and this is, like, 1950s. And they secretly go into this cult, and the cult is led by this lady called Miss Quiche. And she comes out and she says, "Hey, I've been contacted by the extraterrestrials, and they said there's gonna be a flood taking over the world. Everyone is gonna die, and it's happening on this specific date. But if you follow me, you're gonna be saved." So a group of people like quit their jobs, left their families, gave away all their money, like insane stuff, and joined her. The date comes, and the flood does not happen. And like logically, and I think that happened with like we had like a 2012 or something, the world was supposed to end. Like you would think
Mhm,
like people
mhm.
would be like, "Oh, the world didn't end." So
The Mayan calendar was supposed to
yes, the
stay or
Mayan
whatever or something like.
calendar. It felt so similar to that. So you would think people would change, but they actually became even more adamant. They started recruiting people because they said, "Oh, we were," she said, like to them, that we were so faithful that we avoided the flood. Which is funny because in 2012, I had a friend that believed the world was gonna end, and I was like, "So it didn't end." And she said, "No, it spiritually died. We all died spiritually and became anew." And I was like, "Wow." So this idea, that, like, you have a belief, and then this new information comes in that has, like, this, like, competing belief, and the 2 of them, like, are not they butt head, whether it's a belief or an attitude or 2 behaviors that you have that are, like, contradicting each other. The brain does not like that. It's called cognitive dissonance, and when that happens, it has to come up with excuses to justify this new information, right? And that's called motivated reasoning. That's when you say, "Oh, actually, we were believers, so we saved the earth." Or like my friend who was like, "No, no, we all died, so that did happen." Or anything that you say when people justify videos, content, information, anything, anything. And I think the hope is that you can recognize that pattern that like, "Oh, I see my brain does not like that because it means I was wrong. Am I gonna justify this?" And I think what makes it really, really hard is that we live in an ecosystem that is very hard for people to be able to come and say it out loud and say, "I was wrong."
Mhm.
Like, if you see every once in a while someone does that on social media, it was like, "I was wrong. I changed my mind." Man, the comment sections are brutal. Like, "Fuck
Mhm,
you. We
mhm,
told you so. How about you should have changed your
mhm.
now eat that I'm like, "Oh my god." Like, how is this in any way encouraging anyone else to change or for this person to hold on to their guns? It's like the SNL sketch you were telling me the other day about. I'll let you if you wanna.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if anyone else has been, like, recently watching SNL, but it just made me crack up of just, Ashley Padilla was, like, the mother in this skit, And she's like, "I have something very important to say. Like, I think or I feel that maybe I was wrong about Trump." And then, like, her 4 kids are just like, "Ah, we've been telling you, we've been telling you know." So she's like, "What? I won't tell you the truth, like, do you even want me to speak my truth or not? Like, you should be having" like, it cracked me the fuck up because it's, she's, like, playing like a suburban white mom who, you know, uh Trump's rise, some people have like attributed it to just like a large population of like the suburban white women that like voted for Trump or whatever. But anyway, so it's just funny to see like, oh, this person decided to change their mind, but then all their kids are just like, we've been telling you this. So we feel that sense of rage. Like even recently, in my this is probably like revealing some of like my own little ecosystems or echo chambers or whatever of just like, oh, like now, like Joe Rogan is trying to like distance himself from like Donald Trump when he like it's Joe Rogan and like those types of podcasts is like podcast led to a huge push into um Trump getting this like second term.
Mhm.
And but then now they're instead of admitting that they were wrong, they're just like ignoring it and pretending that like they're just going on with their day-to-day business and without acknowledging the amount of power and influence that they had into like not enabling, but I guess like yeah, just like influence in the narrative of like who should be the next president.
Right.
And so I guess like in themes of like, okay, how do we bring this back to science communication when knowing that like, yeah, what you were saying, like communication as a social science, and we're practicing, like we're taking it from like communications, we just apply it specifically to science. And so thinking about cults and thinking about language, like science as an institution is its own kind of cult. We have our own language, we have our own jargon, even within the subfields of science and stuff like that. So I guess like how do we have terms or like when last year when all of our grants were being taken, like no one else really cared besides scientists themselves of just like we are getting our funding taken away. This is ruining grad students' ability to do research, postdocs' ability to do research, or research to do all these other things or whatever. But like outside of our own ecosystem of being a part of this academic institution, the day-to-day person is just kind of like, okay, how does this affect me? And it goes back to even why science communication is important in the first place. It's like we aren't building these bridges with the community to communicate how it affects them. Or when we say that, like, or people in the comments are just like, science shouldn't be political. It's just okay, maybe we shouldn't tribalize science in terms of like, if you believe in science, then you're in the in group. But
Right.
instead of just like, oh, like, how do we bring down science back to its basic language in order to be like, hey, this is how it's affecting you. And this is how, like, this is the ripple effect of this doing this research. But we have done, like, we've done such a shitty job about that.
Right.
But we're kind of like near the end. I want to kind of bring a tool to the audience that has been really fascinating and interesting that kind of lives in the world of Ray and I. There's this independent research place called Harmony Labs. And what their work is mostly just looking at how media influences different types of narratives. So they get hired out by different companies to see, like, okay, what do the narratives look like when it comes to climate science, ultranationalism, education, immigration policy? Like they look at how media influences, like who, like what are people watching that are within these things? And they've been able to kind of like narrow it down into like a really cool table where I forgot what you call it, but it's just like a quadrant,
Right.
a four, like a four
Talk
thing quadrant.
it's harder for right, right.
Yeah, I don't know what you
Part
what's
of
the
4
I don't know.
spaces.
I don't know what's the actual, like, term. I feel like there's a legit term for it, but I just don't know what that term is. But it's a it's a
Right,
quadrant.
right. It's a cross with
Yeah, yeah,
numbers on
there's an up and there's a down, there's a left, and then there's a right. And
it.
so they were able to kinda categorize people into, like, 4 categories based on where they are in, like, this 4-quadrant spectrum, so to say. And so on the further x-axis, like on the right-hand side, is me, and then on the left-hand side is we, and then on like up on the y-axis is strive and create, and on the below axis is protect and preserve. And what I really enjoy about Harmony Labs is that when we think about like science communication and how we can if you want to be a bridge builder, if you want to check your own confirmation biases, and also knowing that we live in a digital ecosystem where everyone is getting their narratives from being online, how does the media consume align with their value system? And so, like with messaging, you can, when you think of your audience, when you're trying to like start your science communication strategy, you're breaking down your audience into kind of like their persona. So you're going down into their ideologies, their demographics, and then another layer of that is like their value systems within the identities or the tribes that they're a part of. And I think what they Harmony Labs tries to do is like, okay, where within these intersections of like where some of these groups are kind of like on the axis, these are people that are able to be open-minded or influence or persuade. So how do we target their value systems when we have people that are kind of in that place where they're able to openly
Right.
receive or in a place to change their mind?
No, I just like the amount of information they added. So it's kind of like I'm using as an example. I don't think like they framed it like that, but it's like if your audience is like don't threat on me people, right? Which is
Mhm.
like it's like all this like specific
I
values.
can go each one. I can describe each one really quick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do like a round.
So the 4 groups that they've identified is the first one is called If You Say So, and this one values autonomy. So there's no one way to succeed, so freedom and fun are paramount. I learned about Harmony Labs when I was working in the PBS digital studio space. They kind of investigative like, okay, where does YouTube, like where does the science edutainment stuff fall in this quadrant? So a lot of the content goes on like the If You Say So, and a lot of the other comment or our audiences live in the people power. So that's like the second quadrant, which is more towards strive and create and the we mentality. If they value community. So like collective solutions can solve complex systemic problems. Then the bottom left quadrant is the tough cookies. These audiences value order. They like to play by the rules, and by playing by the rules is a key to success. And that's more of like they're in the we, but they are more valuing the protect and preserve of the axis. And then we have the bottom right quadrant, which is the don't tread on me people or audiences, where they value authority. They like strong leadership and hard work, are necessities. So you can kind of think about like where our audiences kind of fall with like how do our value systems kind of overlap. So there's tough cookies that are probably lean into the don't tread on me, which are probably like more of like the maha people if we're going to like stereotype them, or the tough cookies that value people power, which are like more of like, mom groups, like mommy TikTok, that we see in these things. But then we have like the Twitch streamers or the edutainment, like Twitch streamers that can kind of live in like the if you say so, but they also value community, which is like the people power. But then we also have the if you say so and don't tread on me, which are kind of like the like the I don't know if this is a right one, a right read, but be like the Andrew Tates, kind of like the more of like the like the men that like hate women. That's like me stereotyping people too. This is like my assumption of how I read it. But if you go on their website, you can see they not investigated, what's another word? They analyzed a crap ton of channels on YouTube, and you can kind of see where like the channels that you watch say so. And they also have like a fun little quiz, like a BuzzFeed quiz of like which one do you fall into?
Right, right.
Yeah, I was interesting for me to see that I fall in the if you say so, but I think that also comes down to like my skepticism. Like I'm always skeptical of like everything that I'm like analyzing kind of thing.
Right. I haven't taken the quiz yet, but I should. And I one of the things I appreciate is that if you're doing like let's say your marketing, your communication strategy, like one of the things we care about is like who should be the messenger. And they even have like categories like if this is your audience, like here are the influencers they care about, like Tucker Carlson, like for this
Yeah.
community. So you can even like be like, oh, who are the type of influencers that they might be like would be a good person that you could choose for your strategy too.
Yeah, yeah. And it also comes down to just kind of like, okay, like, yeah, evaluating like where do you fall on this axis? Like
Mhm.
what are your own value systems? But then it also brings me back to like the example that I brought up earlier of just like the 6 and 9 of just like how our value systems also shape the different narratives that we see. Of just like,
Mhm.
okay, so for example, tough cookie and people power both value community, but like they're going to view the situation of like, for example, like food, like food of just like, oh, is the government trying to poison us, or is the government there to kind of keep things in place, you know? And so it's just like, okay, like how, but when there is that ambiguity that you mentioned that allows for this narrative shift in order to benefit whatever messaging that we're doing, like what is there, how is there a way to kind of evaluate the truths in both, but also like the room for improvement, I guess, so to say kindly, in both areas as well?
Yeah. I think that's a good way to end the episode.
So
Kinda
fun. Oh my god, look at us being all
look at
smart.
life
I even have my glasses. I brought a book out. Oh my gosh, she is studious.
Can I also just say, like, Stephanie and my, like, defense mechanism is humor, and, like,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, someone might listen and be like, "Are you guys, like, okay?" Or like, "Is this funny to you?" And you're like, "No, it's not, but this
That's
is
why we're
the
laughing.
way we're making this like, this is why I'm standing and, like, functioning as a human, because I have these defense mechanisms. Without them, like, I am done." So, I feel like there's a disclaimer that said that, like, we're not
Yeah, yeah.
taking a lot of, like, these topics lightly. It's just
We're
like
not poking fun, you know, whatever. We're not trying to
mm,
be, what is it called? Controversial or
making light
whatever.
of a lot of these topics, but it's just
I Yeah, I think it's just like, how do we find joy? How do we make sure that we're like, another part of me, like going back to like a very beginning of our hates of like having to like live through the guilt and like also all these things of like this feeling of like complacency of just like feeling powerless,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And so I think it comes back to kind of like, okay, like how do we, everyone can show grief in different ways and everyone can show up for the community in different ways. So it's just like, what can I do within my own powers?
Mhm.
It just sucks because, like, we still have to play into the system in order to, like, survive on the day to day.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, Steph, take care of yourself. Be be whatever.
Be who you wanna be. I love that, Renato. Honestly, yeah, thanks, Ray, for sharing your grief, and
Same.
we'll continue chatting in our WhatsApp, and thank you to our listeners for this very studious episode, and, yeah, let us know your thoughts and what you guys feel, but I hope that you guys can find some strength to keep pushing through. Love you.
Goodbye.
Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a